Here's where we're at. This is where we stand in terms of the Biscuit Index, and we've got the two final teams tonight to throw in there, right? So Georgia is at the top there, 12 biscuits. That is the cream of the crop in the SEC, and then it slides down just a little bit. Right underneath them, you got Texas, Ole Miss, and Alabama there on the 10 level. So that's really like your top four there in terms of the Biscuit Index as to overall where the programs are right now. That doesn't necessarily mean this isn't like our power rankings necessarily, right? I think if we did our power ratings for all 16 schools in the SEC, it might look a little different. But this is just overall health of the program, taking in all these different factors that we look at that Hammer laid out there just a minute ago. So this is where we stand. Yeah. Go ahead.
I would say this is I should have confirmed, but yes, this is much more looking in the rear view as opposed to forward looking. This is not projecting or what we think this team could be this year. This is the last 5 years. Where do you stand? Again, on kind of all those different facets rolled into one. So yeah, this is much more of a rear view exercise as opposed to a forward projection. But just, how have you been the last 5 full years?
Yes, that's right. Just overall health of the program. And then, we do take into account like what we think they're going to be like this year based on kind of like, we go through the roster and everything as well. So we take into that into account a little bit for the health, but yes, overall, this is a, overall health of the program, take the last 5 years into account and look into all these different factors as to what makes a program healthy. So with that said, let's get into Mississippi State tonight and talk about what's going on in Starkville. Cue up my drum roll for me, please. Five biscuits for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. So I think the first thing to say for Mississippi State is, right, look, this has been a team that in general, they're a perennial bottom dweller in the SEC, and they have been for a very long time. They've had little blips in their history, the Jackie Sherrill era, certainly, in the 90s and then in the early 2000s. They were pretty solid team then. You had a blip in the Mike Leach era. They go 9-4 in 2022. And then sadly, rest in peace to the Pirate. We love him here at Biscuits and SEC. But it's been pretty tumultuous since then, since the Pirates passing. So I feel like, so last year, I look back, I guess I didn't get to my 16-16, which is formerly what the Biscuit Index was called. For Mississippi State last year, but in 2024 they were 4. Okay, so 2024 that was coming off the 5-7 season, but that was when Zach Arnett got fired. So they got a 4 in 2024. So one above that now here in 2026. And if I had done one in 2025, I think they would have maybe gotten the first either 1 or 2. I don't think we've ever given out a 1 or a 2. And they probably would have gotten that because that was coming off the 2-10 season going into 25. So anyway, I gave them a 5 really because there is some hope. I mean, last year, and I'll talk about this as I go through this, last year, Mississippi State showed some promise. Okay, you get a big win. You beat number 12, Arizona State at home early in the season. That really gives you a push and a boost and a burst of momentum. Then you also have a couple games. You've got multiple teams here that are very solid programs, dead to rights. Okay. You couldn't put them down. You couldn't finish the fight. You couldn't finish the job. But you had Texas, Tennessee, and Florida all on the ropes. And you had them and you let them go. We let them off the hook, right? Mm-hmm. Denny Green, let them off the hook. But you had them right there. So between, looking at that and then looking at overall, I think where this program is, there's kind of some things that dinged them a little. I might have even gone with a 6, but there's a couple things that I dinged them on, which I'll get into in a little bit. Most of that has to do with the roster. But my question to you, looking at 5, if you had to eyeball it, if you were looking at Mississippi State, what would your rating be? You think I nailed it, or would you go lower or higher?
I think so. So for the ratings aficionados out there, 5 is defined as pretty dang burnt, but you can cut the top off and eat it like a silver lining. There's a little hope. 4 would be there aren't many worse than us. Long way to go. Eat a little bit of the mix your cousin sent in the mail, throw the rest out. And then 6 would be right in the middle. Some hope, mostly bland. So I think you nailed it, because I think 4 is a little too bleak, given what you just noted last year. It was a big improvement from 2024. 2025, was a drastic improvement, not only in the win column going from 2 to 5, but you mentioned multiple games that they kind of gave away and were in a position to win that they couldn't capitalize on. But at the same time, this is not a team that, has earned a 6 biscuit, because they are not right in the middle. They're a pretty perennial bottom dweller at this point. And even last year in I hesitate to call it a resurgence, because they went 5-7, but you get the point that they improved a lot. They were still not middle of the pack. They were still very much bottom of the kind of, third at a minimum in the SEC. So I think 5 is fair, especially given, I don't really know still what to think of Jeff Lebby at this point, but he's only been there 2 years, and he went from 2-10 to 5-7. So there's definitely hope there. We'll see what that translates to this year, but I do think there's some potential there, and we can get into the roster and some of that stuff and see how it's looking. But I think it's fair to say there's some hope there. That I think that returned to Starkville last year.
Yeah, I think that's right, and especially too. I mean, there's one name I think that everybody knows on this roster. That's Kamario Taylor, the quarterback. Right, this kid has a very high ceiling. He's got a ton of potential. He flashed that last year late in the season when he took over for Blake Shapen. And he's a kid who I think can really fit into Jeff Lebby's offense well. So between the improvement that they made last year, and then you've got Kamario Taylor on this roster, which if you know nothing else and you just know that Kamario Taylor's there, it's like, okay, well, if he's got enough around him, this team could be really solid and really scare some people, just like they did last year, and maybe finally finish the job and get over the hump, and beat some of these teams. Maybe they get to 6-6 in a bowl game. Maybe they get to 7-5. I think that's on the table for this Mississippi State team. So let's start diving into this a little bit further. You mentioned it. I don't really know what to think of Lebby, right? This is definitely a pivotal year for him. The last 5 seasons here, bring my graphic back up. 23, we're 5-7. Zach Arnett gets fired. 2024, 2-10. Lebby's first year, total roster turnover. Rough year, don't win an SEC game. I mean, you're getting blown out almost every game. It was a really rough season for them. And then last year, as we just talked about, they start making serious improvements and had a couple teams on the ropes. You get ASU, you get a ranked win, you get an SEC win. So it's been a little bit tumultuous, but it feels like that 5 biscuit there, or 5 biscuits, pretty dang burnt, but there's a little silver lining. Cut it off the top. And then you look too at some other things. You look at the blue chip ratio, 15%. Oh boy. Okay. Rough. Not the best. 32 overall in the country, 12th in the SEC, not even close to the level that you need to win a national title. But it doesn't mean you can't win some games in the SEC, and it doesn't mean that you can't that you don't have a couple players in this roster who are diamonds in the rough, which is something that Mississippi State throughout the course of their history, at least in the last 15, 20 years, has been finding diamonds in the rough everywhere. So when we talk about the administration, let's get into the nitty gritty. Okay. If you guys are new here, we go into all this stuff, right? It's kind of a little more than what you'll hear in most other shows because they really don't talk about this stuff, but we think this stuff matters to the health of a program, and that's your administration, your NIL, the investment that's being made into the program from the NIL side to the facilities and all of that, and fan support, et cetera. So the administration, this is one of the more stable administrations in college athletics. The president has been there. He's one of the longest serving presidents in the country. He's been there for 17 years, named Dr. Mark Keenum. His tenure began in 2009. So he's been there for a long time, a lot of stability at the top. That's always great to see, especially at these colleges, an institution like Mississippi State. That's a large institution. AD Zach Selman, he's been there for a while. Folks probably have heard his name. He's been there for a couple of years now. This is his third year on the job. Took over for John Cohen, who left and went to Auburn. Mississippi State fans, you guys can let me know, but I think Zach Selman so far has done a pretty good job. I mean, hiring Brian O'Connor in baseball was absolutely massive. Lebby, it seems like, has this team going in the right direction. I think he's doing well in terms of what he's doing with the facilities and investment and things of that nature. So far, I think it's been pretty good returns on Zach Selman. But if there's Mississippi State fans who are a little closer to the heartbeat of the program in Starkville, I would love to hear your guys' opinion on that. And then obviously you got Jeff Lebby here, third season on the job, and he's 5-year, $435 million, or excuse me, 4.35, not 435, 4.35 million a year. His contract runs through 2029. No extension has been given yet, which is a little bit interesting. So this is kind of like we said, pivotal year, prove it year, right? Got to make it happen. And then I think one other one to mention here, the general manager, Mark Vaudler, he was hired in 2024. Robbie Falk of On3, I read his article about it. He is described as a budding star in the industry. So was at Ohio State and was the director of player personnel there and is credited with some of those great classes Ohio State had in recent history. And then he was also the GM at Marshall. And he's got the Saban background. He was the director of player personnel at Alabama from 2019 to 2022. So, or assistant director of player personnel. So has that background with him too. So I think pretty solid hire there. And I think hopefully you'll see that if you're a Mississippi State fan in terms of the roster construction and maybe some of those diamonds in the rough that they're going to need. So moving in now to facilities, I think Mississippi State is a school in terms of their investment that does more with less, probably better than anybody, right? Everybody knows they're not one of the richest programs in the SEC by any means, not one of the richest programs in the country by any means. But based on what I'm seeing, they've been innovative in a couple ways. One of those was the balconies at Davis Wade. They basically put in open air suites that are about like $5,000, I think, a season. Maybe it's more than that now, but when they opened, it was $5,000 a season, and you could get these balconies. So it's up on the upper deck, and it's essentially like a mini outdoor suite. So kind of an innovative thing. Populous from Kansas City, which is a famous architecture firm that does a ton of stuff on these stadiums. They're the ones that did it. So pretty solid. I thought they're pretty innovative. And then they did $75 million? Yeah, $75 million expansion in 2014. And that increased the capacity past 60,000. Though I think we're down a little bit now that we put those balconies in. So I think still hover around 60,000. And then $9 million in upgrades just went in 2025, where they did the same thing as everybody else, got a new LED system, new tailgating layout at the junction. And then they've also added in fireworks upgrades, some drone shows, I guess, or something. And then upgraded concessions, and it did some things with the concourses. So look, it's not what other schools are spending, right? But they're doing more with less. We've talked about some schools spending $350 million, school spending close to $1 billion, right, on their stadium renovation and all this stuff. So they just don't have the money that others do, but they do as much as they can with what they got, and they're innovative in how they use that money. So I'm not going to dig too deep into their NIL investment here, but just to quickly go over it, as we've talked about, stand under our feet. Everything's kind of changing. Everybody's trying these new things. But Hail State NIL, that's underneath the university. That's a Learfield one. And then they also have an NIL collective. I think it's called the Bulldog Initiative. I don't know how active that one is anymore. But
it's hard to get a read on it.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, but State 1878 definitely is active, and that's a kind of what we've seen around these other schools, right? This membership-based access. You get news, you get intel, you get events, you get VIP treatment of some sort for your monthly membership that eventually goes into their NIL coffers. So, as I mentioned, they just don't have the money that others do, but they spent, according to the NIL standard estimate, around $22 million is about what their roster is valued at for 2026, which $22 million is, not chump change to us down here, but that is less than the SEC in terms of spending for NIL.
Yeah.
So, yeah, kind of what you'd expect. But look, if Lebby's able to get to 6 wins, 7 wins, something like that, again, doing more with less. So, but you got to win. You got to follow through.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's not surprising. I agree that, they're doing what they can, but they've just never been at the top of the SEC and a lot of that stuff. And so it is what it is. But good, good that they've got some continuity, at least the last couple of years at the AD. And I agree. I think the AD is doing a good job up to this point.
Mike says he would have gone with 4 biscuits. We're dealing with a team who has 2 conference wins in 24, and they're going to come up to Minnesota and beat your Gophers like a drum. Okay. Just for that comment.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Clip that and use that. Cause when PJ Fleck wins, they're going to put me on the Jumbotron, put Bossman on the Gophers Jumbotron. So I get that, Mike. I think 4 is totally fair. I think you could have gone there. I think I'm probably a little bit more optimistic, maybe just with the Kamario Taylor piece of this and the fact that, I think Jeff Lebby made these improvements last year, get a big win against number 12 last year, get a win over Arkansas, get that SEC win. I know they were 1-8. So maybe there might be a little bit of hopium in my 5 biscuit rating, but I think we're right on the same page in terms of we're close, right? 4 biscuits or 5. All right, let's move into the coaching staff, and then I'll head down to recruiting, and then we will get into this roster a little bit more and talk a little bit about last season and then look forward to 2026. So there's a couple things I wanted to mention on this coaching staff. First of all, Philip Montgomery is there. Do you remember? I'd have to look this up. Somebody may remember in the comments. I think he was hired this year to come in. I think he was at Virginia Tech last year, maybe. Maybe he was the OC at Virginia Tech. Anyway, I didn't have a chance to look too hard into that, but I'm pretty sure this is his first year in Starkville. But Philip Montgomery is the former Tulsa coach. He's been around the block, but he's well known for having very highly productive offenses. So to have him, I think, paired up with Lebby and to have them bouncing ideas off each other. So first year in Starkville?
First year in Starkville, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's just interesting to point out. Jeff Lebby's the play caller. He's always going to be the play caller, I have a feeling. But Philip Montgomery, having him there, a kind of salty dog, been around the block for a while and knows offense like the back of his hand. Very, very smart offensive mind. So I think that's interesting you brought him in. Zach Arnett is back at DC, the guy they fired a couple of years ago. This is like the new trend. We're bringing the head coach back who couldn't get it done as a head coach, but he can be the DC. Seen it at Virginia Tech and then also at Mississippi State. So but hey, Zach Arnett can run a defense, man. So I'm excited to see what it looks like with him back on the sideline in Starkville. And he's got a couple interesting pieces here that I think he can work with. And even with so much newness around Starkville, they're 86 overall in returning production, 48% on in total, 48% returning production, 12th in the SEC. So there's a lot of newness here, and I'll get into why that is here in a minute. But he's got a couple pieces I think he can work with. So those are a couple guys to mention. A couple others to mention, I think, that I like to kind of look in, down below the surface, right? Okay, who are the analysts? Like, who are some of these other guys that they're bringing in that are around the program? One of those is Matt Wells, senior offensive consultant. Matt Wells, former Texas Tech coach, former Utah State coach, also known as a very solid offensive mind in college football. So good to have him on the staff. Good to have him around the program, hanging out with Lebby and with Philip Montgomery. And then finally, these are the two that I really wanted to mention just a little bit. I think this is great because it means that Lebby is bringing guys back, and he's got folks who have been around the program, who have been in the program, who have done it at Mississippi State at a high level. He's got these guys coaching players up. Jett Johnson and Errol Thompson, both of those guys were all SEC guys at linebacker for Mississippi State in recent memory.
Mm-hmm.
And really, really good players, and he's got them as linebacker analysts now in Starkville, getting their coaching career started. So, bang for your buck, man. That's a bargain having those two guys teaching your linebackers the ropes as you go into the season. So I thought that was a really interesting thing to note.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah,
I have a comment that I'm gonna make, but I'll save it until the end because it kind of fits in anywhere. It's coaching staff related, but
okay.
I'll put a pin in it and I'll come back with it.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's get into the recruiting and the portal now. All right, here is the Mississippi State recent recruiting. It's kind of what you'd expect, right? It's been meh. This is Mississippi State. They got to find diamonds in the rough. They dot the roster with a couple guys. They develop players, and usually they have a couple, 2 draft picks or so that are on the roster, and they do the best with what they got. And it's not like they've been recruiting terribly. Okay, not a single class has been outside the top 30 in the last 5 years. But this is the SEC, and you're recruiting up against the big dogs, right? All these other big programs. I mean, look at this. This is the full Biscuit Index we just did, right? Who are you recruiting against? LSU and Florida and Texas and A&M and Georgia and Oklahoma. Well, somebody's got to be at the bottom, and Mississippi State is, even though they're recruiting pretty much at a top 25 level. They're averaging 27th overall nationally over the last 5 years, even with a couple coaching changes. There's 3 coaching changes in that span. Okay. So recruiting at a top 25 clip across 3 different coaches is pretty impressive when you really think about it. At a place like Mississippi State, you'd expect like a 45 in there somewhere, 45 burger, but they've been able to kind of keep it above water in a sense.
That's very impressive across 3 coaches.
It is
very impressive.
It actually is. Yeah. So 12th of the SEC, that's their average. Here's the big thing that I do want to point out, and this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Zach Arnett's got a couple of key pieces there, some stuff he can work with, but there's a lot of newness. Well, why is there a lot of newness? That's because this roster is turning over every single year. I mean, I know that's like, look in the bottom corner here. All right. Bottom right, 2025. Those are that last column there are how many players left and went into the portal and left Mississippi State. Okay. So over the last 5 years, they've lost 30 players on average every single year. And yeah, that's kind of the new norm in college football in terms of you're going to lose some players. Everybody's dealing with it. But Mississippi State is at the top with Arkansas when it comes to the SEC in terms of players that they're losing. So they've lost basically 40 players in the last 2 seasons, 80 total, right? So 78 players total have left this roster into the portal, not even counting guys who are out of eligibility or who are going to the draft. That's crazy. And it's one thing that I'm interested. I actually kind of want to hear what you think about this, because I really don't understand it at this point. All right. This is Jeff Lebby's 3rd season or 4th season, right? We're going into year 4, 3,
I think.
Going into year 3.
Sorry, 2 and 10. Yeah. 2 and 10, 5 and 7. Yeah.
But even still, we're going into year 3. Okay. Why? I get it after the first year, something like that, or after Zach Arnett gets fired or whatever. Sure. There's going to be a lot of kids that enter the portal and leave. But I just don't really understand how Jeff Lebby can't keep a lot of this roster in Starkville. It's turning over every year. And if there's stability in a program, I know everybody's dealing with it, but most people are looking at like in the 20s. All right. You're looking at like 20-ish players who get into the portal every single year. Mississippi State's dealing with 40. Basically double that. Why? Yeah, I just don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to it either. My suspicion is it's NIL related. Whether that's
probably right.
Legitimate, somebody is getting a better offer elsewhere, or it's perceived and somebody thinks I can get a better offer and I hit the portal. I don't know, because if you look at the guys that are leaving Mississippi State, let's not act like they're going to Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Indiana and, Penn State, whoever, name a big program. It's there. Some are, but they're not all leveling up or going to a program that might have a higher NIL budget. So my assumption is it's mostly NIL related, but I guess my skepticism would lead me to believe I don't know how much of that is legitimate versus just, these kids have agents in their ears. Because I'm with you, especially like we just talked about, hey man, it feels like there's real potential here to build something. We go from 2-10 to 5-7. That's a huge improvement. And we were very close to winning a couple other games. We could have been 7-5 if the ball bounces our way. So why do we have 39 guys hitting the portal? I'm with you. I don't understand it, especially in, after 2 years of Jeff Lebby. It's like pretty clear what you're going to get. But yeah, my guess is just kind of NIL related, which I think is kind of what Arkansas was. Although Arkansas also had the sort of dead man walking Sam Pittman scenario, which I don't think Mississippi State had. I mean, obviously they don't have it. He's not on the hot seat. Maybe if things go terribly this year, he would get fired. But even then, I don't really know where they stand on that. And my opinion would be he's not on the hot seat at all. So maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mississippi State fans, but it doesn't seem like guys would be leaving the program because they think there's a coaching change imminent. So I don't really know. I think it's unfortunately just a symptom of, the current system we're in. Guys think they can maybe get more money or they want to play. So they do go, they're getting hit on both sides. The good players think they can make more money. The guys that rode the bench are tired of riding the bench and they want to go play somewhere.
Yeah. So Mike makes a good point here in the chat, which is maybe he's running them off. Maybe they're not up to par, right? Maybe he's just trying to, okay, we got to 5-7, but now we can get some better players, right? Like, I feel like we've got some guys that aren't up to snuff and aren't doing what the team requires, whether it's because of talent or whether it's off the field stuff or what have you. Yeah, maybe he is running them off. And we talked about that in previous episode when we talked about Sark after SEC Media Days, when he said he literally named the players, right? Like we let him go. Basically, we thought we could do better, and we did. We got Cam Coleman and blah blah blah. So but that was a little different in terms of like Texas let go of like 5 players. Like I think like legitimately had conversations maybe with like 5 kids and said, yeah, we're going to go a different direction. But Mississippi State, there's no way they're telling 40 kids to leave, But
I wouldn't think so, and
it could contribute to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, obviously, and I also, my pushback there would be Texas had a great portal class. Mississippi State had the 40th portal class.
Yeah,
right. So
right.
Again, it's hard to compare those two programs, especially when it comes to recruiting. On the field, they were very close last year. They went to overtime. But when it comes to recruiting and money and what have you, Texas towers over them, as they do most programs. But
right.
Yeah, it's tough. I think if that's possible, he could be doing that with some guys. But, like you said, you don't want to be doing that with 40 guys every year because then you just have no continuity for many reasons outside of just talent alone. That's a bad idea.
It's just very hard to build a program and a culture when you're just constantly turning the roster over. So it is one thing that I kind of have an asterisk by of like, I said at the outset, there are things to be excited about, and there's also a couple things to knock them on and dig them on, and it kind of like make you scratch your head and file away of like, but I don't know about that, So just something to watch as we watch Mississippi State this season and over the next couple of years, and to see if that trend continues. Do they keep losing 40 kids, and are they getting they're bringing in a ton of kids too, right? I mean, this season they brought in 27 players out of the transfer portal, but that was still only good for the 40th in the country because are the players that they're bringing in that much better? Maybe they're identifying some great diamonds in the rough and they're going to develop these players better than anybody. And maybe that's their calling card, right? But just something to think about as we watch it over the next couple of years. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move now into the roster construction. So as you guys who watch us frequently know, I have my own little rating system for the roster here. Okay, so this is my roster rating system. Question mark. I do this for each position group. Basically, I go position group by position group, and I say, question mark. Is there serious questions here at this on this group? Mediocre is M. Are they okay? Are they so-so based on what I'm seeing with the eye test? AA above average, S for strength, and S plus is your best position group on the team. That's the one that leads the team. Probably going to be the best of the bunch, or at the very least, it's the best position group on that side of the ball. So this season, here's what I'm looking at for the Mississippi State roster. I think the offensive line is kind of mediocre. And then I think they're above average at a lot of these other ones. I think I probably could have gone mediocre at wide receiver and tight end, and offensive line was teetering on a big question mark. And I think looking at it now, maybe I would give them a question mark. So I'll go through this quickly in terms of the offense here. But in terms of the offense, the reason I say it's mediocre to question mark, teetering, is because you lost 4 starters and 3 backups. So you lost 7 players off the offensive line, and you brought in 8 transfers.
Jeez.
Okay. So I'm already questioning Bossman's rating system, question mark, right? 44 starts overall. So of the offensive linemen they brought in from the portal, 44 starts overall. So they've got some experience, and we'll see if that matters and see if that they mesh. But projected starters here, Cannon Boone, he's the only returner. He is a senior. And then you've got a bunch of transfers. You got LSU transfer G.J. Chester. You got L.J. Prudhomme at right guard. I think I said his name right. Arkansas transfer. And then you got left tackle Miles McVay Jr. He's an Alabama transfer. And then Jakeep Shumpert Perkins, who is a senior. He's not a starter. He's a returner, but he was not a starter last season. But he's expected to be a starter. He had 2 starts, I believe, last season. So we'll see. I mean, that's I think to me, right, looking at the offense, that is the biggest question mark here is can they protect Kamario Taylor and can they open up the running lanes for Fluff Bothwell? And Fluff Bothwell's a solid – he's the best. I love that name. And he's a really good running back. And so are they able to protect Kamario Taylor, give him enough time to get the ball to some of these weapons on the outside and give Fluff Bothwell some running room? And I think, we'll see. We're going to find out pretty quickly when they go to Minnesota in week 2. But the other thing I think that's interesting there too is I think with a quarterback like Kamario Taylor, Blake Shapen last year for most of the season, he was more of he's a pocket passer, right, for the most part. He could get out of the pocket a little bit and shimmy shake a little bit, but it wasn't much, right? Kamario Taylor, on the flip side, he's an athlete. Okay, he can throw the ball for sure, but he can also get out of the pocket and he can run a little when he needs to. So maybe if your offensive line has some woes, they need to give him a little time to throw, but maybe with his legs, he can negate some of those sacks that would happen on a different style of quarterback. But definitely offensive line, biggest question mark. I don't need to go through this for too long. Kamario Taylor, he's the guy, right? If you know one player on this roster, you know Kamario Taylor. And we'll see how it goes this year. I think he's in a good offense for him. The biggest question to me is, does he have enough around him? And we'll see. I think we'll find that out over the course of the season. Running back, above average to me. Fluff Bothwell is a solid running back. So give him some running room, give him some space, give him some holes from that offensive line. I think it'll be solid. They also have a guy named Colin Wilson who flashed in spring. Folks are looking for him to get some carries as well this year. Media in Starkville is calling this the best and deepest running back room that Mississippi State has had in years. So we'll see. Jury's out. From 30,000 foot view from the outside the glass looking in, I see some talent in the running back room. I'm interested to see how it goes. Maybe they will be proven right by the end of the season. All right, let's move here into the defense. Mediocre, I have on the defensive line. I've got S+ at linebacker. And in the secondary, I've got mediocre, and special teams, I got mediocre as well. So, so. On the defensive side of the ball, I got a couple key pieces. as I mentioned earlier, that Zach Arnett can work with. So defensive line, they added 5 transfers. They lost 7 off of last year's defensive line.
Man,
so pretty big question mark. I mean, right? We brought in 39 guys left, and we brought in whatever I said it was. What was it, like 28, 27? So it's just a lot of newness. And Will Whitson comes back. He had an injury last year, but he was playing pretty well early on before he got injured. So they're expecting him at defensive end to be pretty solid. Dylan Evans transferred in from A&M. He was a pretty big recruit. I'm interested to see how he does. And then they got DJ Reed at defensive tackle. You got Calvin Dinkins there as well. Both those guys had 2 sacks last year, expected to make big jumps this year. So kind of like, hey, there's some talent there, but again, let's see it, prove it. They need to get some pressure on the quarterback. Linebackers, that's where I gave the S+. Isaac Smith, I think, is the key to this defense. He's a stud. He's going to be the tent pole that Zach Arnett builds his defense around. He's at the star. 2024, he was second team All-SEC. They have five linebackers. This was according to Phil Steele. They've got 5 linebackers who can legitimately play. Deepest position group on the team, and these guys are solid. So this linebacker core could be really what makes this defense hum, I think, all season. Secondary, 1 starter returning, added 6 transfers. God only knows. Okay, we'll see how the secondary is. It was decent last year. It was middle of the pack in the SEC, but it's all new guys, man. So who knows? I don't know how they're going to be at all. One thing to mention, too, about the defensive line, Mississippi State was last in the SEC last season in rush defense. So that defensive line has got to get a lot better. They got to be getting pressure on the quarterback, but biggest thing is they got to start stopping the run.
That
all right.
Worries
Talk to me about what do you think?
Just not having looked too much into Mississippi State coming into the year. 5 defensive linemen, 7 offensive linemen gone worries me. Yeah. We talk all the time. SEC, it's one of the trenches. You lost everybody in the trenches. Not that they were that good, but that's a lot of new faces, man.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And they gotta make it all mesh. So up to the coaching staff. We'll see what it looks like. Again, week 2. Talk about it a little bit. Minnesota's not a bad Big Ten team. Those guys are middle of the pack to upper half in the Big Ten every single year. They've been consistent. PJ Fleck wins 8+ games a year, and they always have massive offensive linemen, and they run the daggum ball. So we'll know very, very quickly if that defensive line is going to be able to hold up, because they're going to play an SEC type of offensive line when they play Minnesota. All right, let's move in here to what went wrong in 25, what went right in 25, and then we'll talk about 2026, and then we'll get into the schedule a little bit, and then we'll move into Vandy. So, all right, what went wrong in 25? I talked about it a little bit earlier. You couldn't finish when it mattered. You had Texas, you had Tennessee, you had Florida on the ropes. You had them, man. You were able to finish off Arizona State. That's great. But this year, we got to finish the job. I mentioned this a second ago. The defense gave up 30.2 points per game. They had the worst rush defense in the conference. So that's why Zach Arnett was brought back. That's why they have a new defensive coordinator. Zach Arnett's got to get this thing figured out, got to stop the run better, and have to get the secondary, which is basically all new, up to snuff very quickly. Otherwise, they're going to get torched all year long. So we'll see how that works out for them. What went right in 2025? Got an SEC win, got that ASU win, and you found your quarterback in Kamario Taylor. Late in the year, he starts to come up, all right? He takes over for Blake Shapen when Blake Shapen gets injured. But he showed flashes, and it looks like with some development and some time and just snaps and reps, this kid can be really solid. And then obviously last year as well, Brennan Thompson was electric. He was really solid at wide receiver. So there were some good things to take away from last year for sure, right? 5-7, made some improvements. Definitely, if you're a Mississippi State fan, while there were some crushing losses, I mean, absolutely just, pain when it comes to those that I mentioned, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. There was still some silver lining and some bright spots for the Bulldogs. So what do they need in 2026? We got to build on that momentum. We got 5 wins last year. We could have had 6. We could have had 7. Then let's get the 6. This year we got to finish. It's one word: finish. finish some of these games when you've got these teams on the rope, get to a bowl game, get to 7-5 if you can. Let's just keep making progress. Let's not dip back down to 4-8. Let's not go 3-7. At the very least, let's stick at 5-7. And, we got to make some improvements too. I think it's pretty much that simple. And I know that seems broad, but sometimes it really is that simple. It's just about a mentality thing. And I think this program just needs to instill that and just finish the job. When you got them by the neck, just go for the jugular, right? So,
yeah, and it's hard to say, what do you need in 26 when the whole roster's basically new? It's like, well, we need a lot of different guys to pan out. So let's make this pretty broad here and just win the games you're in a position to win, because we could name a lot of different position groups specifically and say, well, we need this transfer to work out. We need that transfer to work out. So I like that.
Right. So let's finish this off here. I want to go through their schedule a little bit, and then we can talk about how they can earn some extra biscuits here. It's the SEC. It's tough. It's hard. We know. And also you get this out of conference in Minnesota, which that's a big measuring stick. All right. That game in week 2 right there, going on the road to Minnesota.
Yeah.
What do you got? Minnesota's not a bad team. Minnesota's a solid Big Ten school. And is Mississippi State able to go up and get a big road win? We'll see against the team that they should match up well with. And also, it's going to be bragging rights for the SEC on that one, obviously. Right? So, can Mississippi State, a typical lower rung team in the SEC, are they able to beat a mid-tier Big Ten team? We'll see. But the big one to me here, all right, so I think I went through this. I think you're favored in 2 to 3 games. I don't think you're favored much. Don't expect to be favored.
No.
Toss up, I think you probably got one game that you're toss up. And then I think you got 7 to 9 games here where you're a dog. So it's going to be tough, man. The big stretch to me, I mean, this is just an absolutely brutal stretch here. Thank God you get a bye in the middle of it. But Alabama, week 5, week 6 bye, week 7 LSU, got to go to Baton Rouge, week 8 Oklahoma, and then you go in week 9 to Texas. And then, don't forget week 10 Vanderbilt, who we'll talk about here in a minute. And Vandy won 10 games last year. Thank you, Greg Sankey. So, yeah, the schedule is rough.
That's really rough. I mean, anytime you got a 9-game SEC schedule, but then, like you said, add that road trip to Minnesota, who is one of the most consistent teams in the country, frankly, that's really, really challenging.
Yeah.
Gosh, and like you said, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you want to kind of build some momentum, but the schedule just doesn't allow that, dude. You better be ready to roll by week 2. Because if you get punched in the mouth at Minnesota, great. Here comes Williams-Brice. It's 100 degrees, and South Carolina is pretty good. And then you host. Yeah, it's just there's really no breaks from week 2 through the season. I mean, they still get the Tennessee Tech game later, but by that point, you're a zombie team if things don't go well. if things do not go well early on, you'll win the Tennessee Tech game, but you might be dead.
I mean, you almost think that like Minnesota there it's a must win in a sense, because you want to get some momentum. If you don't get some momentum going into the rest of this, gauntlet, this, grinder, gosh, I don't know if you got a shot.
Well, for the gamblers out there, it's an absolutely must win. If their over and under is 4, you've got ULM and Tennessee Tech, and then you got to get 3 more to cash the over. Minnesota is absolutely a must win if you're going to get to 5 wins. Yeah. Looking at the schedule. Now, that said, if things go well, South Carolina, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Auburn, Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl. I mean, it's the Egg Bowl. Never say never. Like, those are games where it's possible, but as you said, they will not be favored. So you're going to have to be pulling off upsets left and right, which is just easier said than done.
Yep. It sure is. So I just wrote one thing down. I had one bullet point here for how they can earn some extra biscuits. I think let's keep that momentum going, and that means get to a bowl game. Let's get to 6-6. And looking at that schedule, it's not going to be easy, but get to a bowl game. That'll earn some extra biscuits, or get to 7-5 easily. That'll get you up to 6. I think 6 biscuits. So
Yeah.
just keep the momentum going, Bulldogs.
Well, I don't want this to start a diatribe. I just give me a quick. You could even give me a yes or no response here. But I said I had a question for you about the coaching staff, and I'm curious your take. Let's say they win 4 or 5 games this year, Mississippi State. Dan Mullen and UNLV go 11-1, make the CFP. Are you making that call?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think you would be stupid not to. If you are Zach Selman sitting in that chair, I think that if that is the scenario, okay, if Jeff Lebby's at 4 wins, let's say they go 4-8, and they go 11-1, and Anthony Calandria lights the world on fire, and UNLV goes to the college football playoff, I think that you have to at least back channel. All right, start with the back channel. Let's have your people call my people, and let's see if there's any interest. If there's no interest, you lay your hands off and you say whatever. Okay, but he was the best coach in Mississippi State history. All right, when it comes down to it, Dak Prescott, all sorts of stuff. They were winning 8-9 games a year consistently under Dan Mullen. So he got them to number 1 in the country. Okay, in 2014. You have to at least back channel there. So that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I was just curious. Of one thing to note, Calandria, I believe, is at Nebraska now. Dan Mullen famously
you're right.
Is reviving Jackson Arnold to see if he has a pulse. But
that's right.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you do at least back channel and see. And I think Dan Mullen, I think he would be interested. It's a new era, very different time. It's not the same job that he took whenever, but I think he'd be interested. But anyway, that's a conversation for later in the season if those two things are panning out that way.